Good afternoon, students, and welcome back. Uh, in today's session, as indicated earlier in the last session as well, we are going to discuss cold chain logistics. I very briefly gave an overall idea as to what cold chain logistics is all about. As always, when you read this particular, the three words, we have been discussing logistics. We have been discussing a chain of companies, a chain of units, a chain of individuals connected together, integrated together. It's a supply chain, it's a value chain. So they all remain the same. In reverse logistics, the word logistics remained the same. All that we discussed in the last couple of sessions on reverse logistics was reverse, not the forward logistics, but how shipment are retrieved for various reasons from customers or the end users and brought back to the manufacturers for different reasons which we are not going to repeat in this session. Today, in this particular session, what is most important over here is to identify this particular word cold. That itself would imply we would be discussing about a sector which involves movement of certain items within a temperature controlled environment. Right from the place of origin to the destination, these items require a temperature controlled container, a temperature control, any transportation, any freight, any container that is moving, that needs to be within a certain temperature. So, when a shipment gets into a warehouse, the warehouse needs to be under a certain temperature, and when we say cold, obviously the temperature needs to be below a certain temperature, it has to be cold. So, we are primarily talking of two major industries. One is food and beverage, while the other one, and we had discussed this earlier, is pharma. Both these industries require, today cold chain logistics is a significant contributor to the revenue that our country generates. We will see at a later stage the numbers, and the numbers are very, very impressive in terms of the total revenue generated by this particular industry and the potentiality that this country has over a period of time. When you go over to retail shops, you would have seen that there are a number of food items which are processed, semi-processed, or ready to use, and you would have seen those items being kept at a particular temperature in those retail stores. So, as I said, these are the items. At the same time, this is about the food and beverages industry. When you talk of pharma as well, there are products, there are items, serums, liquid medicines, which needs very, very sensitive way of handling, particularly the temperature that they should be they should go through during the entire logistics operation, right from the time that they are manufactured at the plant or at the factory or at the facility, then the transit that they go through, either through railways, different modes of transportation, with whatever modes of transportation it may be roadways, airways, sea freight, etc. So, the entire journey, the shipment should be maintained at a particular temperature, otherwise any breakages. And when we say chain, we mean to say that this particular temperature needs to be maintained throughout the journey. And when we say journey, it is not only the movement of the goods from the origin to the distributor to the warehouse or to the customer. Journey right from the time it has been produced till the time it has been consumed by the customer. Not at a single point of time a company can afford to let the shipment go through a temperature which is not suitable for this product, otherwise the entire product will be of no use at all. So, this is cold chain logistics. We have seen cold chain logistics earlier as well, but as I said, when we go through the numbers, you will see the rate of the growth, the rate at which this particular industry is growing, food, beverage and pharma. So, continuity is what is required, and that is why this word chain has been used to describe this particular logistics function, which is cold chain logistics. We will go to the slide and see the definitions. So, what is cold chain logistics? Logistics remain the same. It is a temperature controlled refrigeration. So, a logistics which involves temperature controlled containers, warehouses, results into cold chain logistics. And what are the major sectors? We have already discussed: food and beverages, biopharmaceutical. So, what are the cold chain logistics infrastructure required? It is quite similar. It is quite similar to the forward logistics or the normal logistics or supply chain that we have seen for other products, except that the temperature, except the temperature factor, the entire logistics process remains the same. So, you have supply procurement, transportation, storage, and from storage again transportation and to the end customers. So, when you say supply procurement, what are the kind of resources that we require? We need pre-cooling system, there are farms, manufacturers. Under transportation, you have refrigerated trucks, you have refrigerated railway wagons, refrigerated cargo containers. In storage as well, you need to have cold storage warehouses. Transportation again is the trucks or the railway wagons or the containers, or even when it moves airways, there are specialized containers that is required, which needs to be maintained at a certain temperature. When it reaches the end customers, the retail, terminal markets, factory, ports, airport. So, what do we see over here? First of all, the temperature and the chain and that continuity right from the time that it leaves a plant, that leaves the point of origin or the factory right to the end customers through the retailers. A temperature controlled forward logistics is termed as cold chain logistics. We will go to the next slide to see how the system operates. So, a product is manufactured at the farm, then it goes through a cold chain process assisted by safe and hygienic refrigeration, and it goes to the consumer. It is not exactly new in India, it is fairly well established, particularly for dairy based products. In our country, milk, cheese, butter, ice cream, these are the items that has been produced and distributed through a cold chain logistics for a long time. Then later on, we had products like fish, meat and poultry products, which also went through a cold chain logistics, and then it is still at an infancy level for the fruits and vegetables market. But let me tell you, the fruits and vegetable markets are also very quickly going through, will go through a cold chain logistics process. Just to give you an example, the other products are quite understandable when we talk of milk or cheese or butter, which does not have a long lifespan. If they are subject to a higher temperature, it will get spoiled, it will get, it will not be suitable for consumption for the customers. In earlier days, if you look back, poultry products, fish, mutton, chicken, etc., they were eaten fresh in our country. But the situation has changed in the last couple of decades, or more so in the last 1 decade. We have such products where such items, whether they are fresh or they are semi-processed, they are manufactured, packaged, and they go through a cold chain process from the time of production. There are various companies today who are manufacturing, who are producing such items which are ready to use, ready to eat, and they go through a process by which the entire journey from the time that they are produced in the respective facilities or the factories, right up to the retail stores, they are sent through. The entire logistics system is under a particular temperature, and the temperature, obviously when we say cold, it is either frozen or cold. Same with the beverages. You have seen a number of beverages which are consumed cold, they are not consumed beyond a certain temperature. So, those beverages as well, they go through a cold chain supply chain process. We have not mentioned the pharma products over here, which is also extremely important. There are some very, very sensitive life-saving drugs which needs to be maintained at a certain temperature, which needs to be saved, which needs to be sent from one place to the other, and the time span and the time covered between one place to the other maybe is quite large. Now, in normal temperature, all these sensitive medicines or these life-saving drugs may get spoiled and may be harmful and fatal for the consumers. So, these pharma products also goes through a cold chain logistics process. Though in the slide it has been said that the fruit and vegetable market is still at a nascent stage, it is still at an infant stage, but things are changing very, very fast. Let me give you an example. Today we have a system by which vegetable and fruits can be purchased online. Yes, it can be purchased online, and we have seen that happening. It can be purchased right from the vegetable market, from the wholesale market as well, and can be brought right from North India to South India or vice versa. There are several vegetable wholesale market or mandis. Now, there are certain items which go through a long distance of transportation. Now, you do not expect items like fruits, delicate vegetables or fruits to remain fresh throughout the journey. So, cold chain logistics is coming up. If you go through the highways, if you go through the highways in our country, you will find several logistics, and there are several cold chain warehouses coming up, because in transit all these items needs to be stored, because the distribution happens at various locations in our country. So, something which is produced in North India needs to be distributed in west, south, north, wherever it may be, at different parts of the country. So, while these shipments move through containers or through transportation system, which themselves are refrigerated or temperature controlled, when they arrive at the destination, they needs to be stored, and again the storage area needs temperature protection, temperature controlled, because everything is not consumed on a single day. So, like all other items, as we have seen, they first get into a warehouse, and from warehouse, depending upon the customers, they get sorted and distributed. Same thing happens with such perishable items, where they need to be stored in a warehouse first and then distributed. So, these warehouses needs to be temperature controlled. So, food and vegetable market also very quickly is subject to cold chain logistics, and it is happening big time and in a big way, because food and fruits market, they are voluminous. The movement of fruit and vegetables, the volume of the fruits or vegetable moved in our country is quite large. So, similarly, you need very frequent and bigger facilities for them to be stored or moved from one place to the other. So, we have seen milk products, dairy products, which are relatively old in our country. The practice is not really new in our country, which is happening for quite some time now, followed by items like, as I said, fish or mutton or chicken, which again earlier were not really subject to cold chain logistics because they were consumed fresh. But today, with change in time, with change in lifestyle, with change in our socio-economic structure, lot of packaged food, when I am referring to these particular products, lot of such packaged foods are distributed all over the country and consumed by the customers. So, they are huge in numbers, the volumes are very, very impressive and they are growing. Every year the numbers are increasing. So, they also need to be sent through a process of cold chain logistics. Let us go to the next slide and see the exact definition, and as always please refer to the words which are marked in red. A cold chain is a temperature controlled supply chain. Unbroken cold chain is an uninterrupted series of refrigerated production, storage, distribution activities, associated equipment logistics to be maintained at a desired low temperature range. Why is it used? Why is cold chain logistics required? Preserve, extend the shelf life of the product. We have given the examples: fresh agricultural produce, seafood, frozen food, photographic films, chemicals, pharmaceutical drugs. These are also called cool cargo. Unlike other goods or merchandise, cold chain goods are perishable and always en route towards end use or destination, even when held temporarily in cold stores, or hence commonly referred to as cargo, during its entire logistics cycle. What is cold chain management? So, we have just defined cold chain, and cold chain management is the means to ensure a constant temperature for a product that is not heat stable from the time it is manufactured. So, few of the words which are important in that definition is continuity, and continuity of what? Temperature. The entire journey, supply chain, we all know the supply chain, the manufacturer, the supplier, the manufacturer, the warehousing, the distributor, the retailer, and hence the end customer. So, this entire supply chain, there cannot be a moment when this particular shipment is taken out of its zone of that particular temperature. It has to remain in that particular temperature throughout the supply chain process. So, what we are talking of: continuity, temperature, cold, entire journey. Also the equipments, you have to understand there are several equipments that are used. We have so far discussed about the packaging material, we have discussed about material handling in the warehouses. For cold chain products, that also are very, very specific to cold chain logistics, whether it is the packaging of that particular product. You would have seen a lot of ampoules being sent in thermocol cartons, thermocol boxes. So, there are several packing materials that ensure the temperature is maintained at a certain level. There are certain equipments which are used, because these are very, very delicate items, whether we are talking of a beverage, whether we are talking of food or pharmaceutical. They are not as firm or as for other industrial products, machineries, compared to machineries and other industrial products. These perishable items are very, very sensitive, and accordingly the material handling equipments that are used are very, very carefully chosen and used, so that the material handling process itself does not destroy the continuity of the temperature. So, though the overall logistics process remains the same, the various locations, at the various facilities, at the various points of its logistics journey, whether we are talking of packaging or material handling, that too are very, very specific to this particular system of cold chain logistics. So, this is what has been told in this particular definition. We have also given examples of the type of items that are subject to cold chain logistics, and we have discussed that earlier. We have just seen some addition over here, for instance, seafood, which has not been a very, very popular item in India earlier, but if you see now, seafood is becoming more and more popular in our country. If you see port logistics, if you go to the ports, you will be surprised to see the volume of seafoods being either imported or exported out of the country. And both ways, you need cold chain logistics process, because these are very, very sensitive. These cannot survive. We cannot maintain the lifespan of these particular products if they are not subject to a particular temperature throughout the entire logistics process. Let us go to the next slide, which again tells you a little more about cold chain. There are a series of facilities for maintaining ideal storage condition for perishable from point origin. It extend and ensure the shelf life of products. It retains the longevity of the product characteristics, active ingredients, freshness, nutritive value. When we say quality, quality is a very, very general word to use. Quality includes the texture, the quality would include the taste, the quality would include the nutrition, the health benefits of that particular, when we talk of food products, whether we are talking of pharma products. So, the quality is a combination of all these factors. So, it is not only the lifespan, one should understand that when you are talking of carrying cheese from one place to the other, from one country to the other, one state to the other, one region to the other, cold chain logistics is growing in our country. But if you go to developed countries like US, Australia, Canada, Western European countries, you would find cold chain logistics being executed, and the quantum and the volume of materials which are subject to cold chain logistics, particularly in the food industry. Because unlike our country, these countries are used to canned food, these countries are used to milk products, these countries are used to cheese, and all these items are extremely perishable. So, they maintain and they follow a very, very strict and a very organized cold chain logistics process, which currently we are also doing in our country, and it is expected to grow every year now. So, we summarize cold chain logistics as an unbroken cold chain in an uninterrupted series of storage and distribution activities. Distribution activities which maintain a given temperature range. It is used to help extend, ensure the shelf life of products such as fresh agriculture. So, if you are asked what is cold chain, this last slide would be, and I am going to share, as always, I am going to share the slides in the form of a PDF file to you. So, if you are asked what is cold chain logistics as a definition or as a concept, the last slide is apt. It tells you everything about cold chain logistics in one slide. It tells you about the temperature, it tells you about the continuity, it tells you about the type of food, and what cold chain does, what are the benefits of cold chain logistics. I did say at the very beginning, why cold chain logistics? Cold chain logistics was never a topic in supply chain management curriculum anywhere earlier. But let us now see the figures. We cannot ignore a subject, we cannot ignore a process, we cannot ignore a logistics system. The way e-commerce is something, e-commerce as an industry cannot be neglected any further. The retail industry cannot be neglected any further, reverse logistics cannot be neglected any further. Similarly, cold chain logistics cannot be neglected any further, because the kind of potentiality, the kind of business or the revenue it already generates, it has already generated so far. But at the same time, we have to understand, with this kind of potentiality, we also need to understand what are the challenges that lie in our country. What are the kind of initiatives the government is taking to overcome these challenges? What are the kind of initiatives the private companies are doing to overcome the challenges? So, if there is a potential, we need to improve our infrastructure. If there is a potential, we need to remove all the hassles and the barriers and the obstacles. And there are obstacles in our country which prevents us from this, which is very important, continuity. Just to give you one example, as I said, any truck and refrigerated trucks, I will show you figures and images and videos later. You will see for yourself, these trucks are referred to as reefer vans, reefer trucks. They need a continuity. They run through there is a circuit which helps the entire container attached to the truck to be maintained at a particular temperature, and it cannot, as I have been saying from the very beginning, continuity is extremely important in cold chain logistics. Even for a moment, if a truck is bound to stop for whatever reasons it may be, and a truck is made to switch off the engine, that would make the entire refrigeration, it will come to a halt, the refrigeration will stop. And there are items which cannot even afford to, they cannot even a few seconds of temperature variation will spoil the entire item. So, there are such sensitive items. So, let us go to the slide and see what is the current scenario in India. As I said earlier, the figures will speak for themselves. Currently the cold chain market in India is worth $3 billion. This is a bit old, so that the figures are little old, so you can expect the figures to be even higher in 2016 and 17. So, the market is already 12.4 billion in 2015. When I say currently, it was about 3 to 4 years back. So, currently the market is around $12.4 billion. The cumulative capacity is nearly 25 million tons, resulting in loss of about 40% of the agri produce post harvest. Uttar Pradesh has the maximum 1579 numbers of cold chains, followed by West Bengal, Maharashtra, Punjab. The current market demand is 10 times more than what we have today. You will be surprised to know the amount of produce, agricultural produce, that's spoiled, that's a waste, because we do not have the enough infrastructure to maintain those crops over a period of time. They are spoiled because we do not have the infrastructure, we do not have refrigerated warehouses, we do not have enough reefer vans to carry these materials. So, if a material is to be delivered from one place to the other, we do not have enough reefer vans which can ensure safety delivery or carriage of these materials from one place to the other. So, I have personally visited few of the wholesale markets, vegetable and fruit markets, and it is very impressive to see the volume of agricultural produce, the harvest every year, particularly in places like northern India, East India. But because of lack of proper infrastructure, we are losing at least 25 to 30% of the total produce. But things are improving and things will improve even more. So, we have seen the current market demand is 10 times more than what we have today. Whatever we are supplying, that demand is even much more than that. But unfortunately, we are not in a place to cater to the demand because of the insufficient infrastructure in cold chain logistics, because of insufficient resources available, people to manage and control cold chain logistics. So, it is a combination of several things, but gradually we will also study that how gradually we are trying to overcome these challenges to ensure that, because our country is an agricultural based country, we have to understand food industry can grow many folds if cold chain logistics infrastructure is taken care of. So, let us see the next slide. There are three means in which cold chain products can be transported: refrigerated trucks and rail cars, refrigerated cargo ships, and air cargo. Let us see a few facts and figures about India's cold chain sector. Currently, India's cold chain sector or the cold chain logistics is restricted to surface storage and refrigerated transport. Surface storage, that means we have means to carry shipments by road transport. We do not have sufficient reefer vans and we need more and more. The industry is growing at a CAGR of 20% for the last 3 years, 20% every year. It was anticipated to reach 624 billions by the end of the current year. Cold stores are the major revenue contributors of the Indian cold chain industry. And as I said, when I myself travel across highways, I am surprised to see the growth of cold storages all across the country. Earlier, it was restricted only to northern India and eastern India because of the crops or the type of food, fruits, etc., being produced in this particular regions. But now you travel anywhere. The other day I was traveling through Andhra Pradesh and I saw very impressive number of cold storages being built on both sides of the highways. Currently, India has approximately 6,300 cold storage facilities, which is far below than what we require. The capacity of all the cold storages combined is 30.11 million metric ton. More than 50% of the cold storage facilities in India are currently, and we said this in our earlier slide, is in Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. Organized players contribute only 8 to 10% of the cold chain industry market. 36% of these cold storages in India have capacity below 1000 metric tons. That means each of the cold storages can only accommodate a volume of 1000 metric tons, which is again, as I said, is extremely insufficient. 65% of India's cold chain storage capacity is contributed by the state of Uttar Pradesh. At the current capacity, only less than 11% of what is produced. See the last sentence, which is very, very discouraging and alarming. At the current scenario, only 11% of what we produce, and we are not talking of machineries, right? We are not talking of industrial goods. We are not talking of all the consumer goods. We are talking of, yes, we are mentioning about perishable food, perishable items like food, beverages and pharmaceutical products. With the current scenario, only 11%, it can be, the figure may be a little low compared to what we have currently. It may definitely have risen to 15 to 16%, but that itself is a very, very low figure, that what is produced needs to be consumed immediately, or they become obsolete, or they cannot be used any further. So, they need to be maintained, they need to be stored properly, they need to be carried properly from one place to the other and stored at temperature controlled warehouses. That is a serious concern. I said we have challenges. Now, let us see, there are a lot of initiatives being taken to overcome these challenges. We will read out a few of these initiatives in the next slide. 100% FDI through government route. Since 2011 and 12, cold chain has been given infrastructure status. So, cold chain, development of cold chain, when we say development of infrastructure, earlier we already mentioned about ports, about the roads, the transportation system, the power system, etc., etc., etc. But in 2012, since 2012, cold chain is also a part of infrastructure. So, when we talk of development of infrastructure, cold chain logistics is a part of it. Viability cap funding up to 40% of the cost, 5% concession on import duty, service tax exemption, excise duty exemption, subsidy, etc. Establishment of National Center for Cold Chain Development, proposed financial outlay for costs in infrastructure, food parks, US dollars 335 million, 650 millions. So, basically what this slide says, and you have to study this in detail yourself, that yes, there are challenges, yes, we are far beyond or far away from meeting the demand of the Indian market. One is the demand, one is where we can be, what is the potential. One, we cannot accommodate the current demand. Two, there is an apprehension that our country or our infrastructure is not capable of taking advantage of the tremendous potentiality this particular industry has. We will discuss more on cold chain logistics. I think it will take us another session to discuss on cold chain logistics. And since I have been showing you a lot of videos, and I am sure a few of them have been very interesting for you. We have shown videos on material handling, warehousing, we have shown videos on reverse logistics, recycling of waste products. We will also see videos or images, pictures, whatever, on the different cold chain warehouses, how they are maintained, the different kind of material handling involved in cold chain logistics. What is the process like? We will see them in the form of a video. We will refer to a company, a case study of a company, how they maintain their cold chain logistics successfully. So, we will do some case studies and videos, but in the coming sessions. As far as today is concerned, we have only one session for logistics and supply chain. We do not have a second session for some reason. I am going to see you again next Tuesday, which is 6th of June. Till that time, a happy weekend, and please study, because you are soon going to come across an evaluation. Thank you very much.